Tonight, we're going to take a slow walk through the entire history of one of the most beloved video game characters ever created. A short Italian plumber who started life more than 40 years ago as a nameless pixelated figure with no name at all, jumping over barrels in a construction yard. Over the next 3 hours, we'll move gently through 387 facts about the Mario games in roughly chronological order, starting in 1981 and ending in the present day. There's no need to remember any of it. There's no quiz at the end. Just let the facts wash over you, one after another, slow and steady, like turning pages in a very old, very comfortable storybook. If you drift off before we're finished, that's perfectly alright. That's the whole point. Let's begin in a construction site in the year 1981 with a barrel-throwing gorilla and a character nobody had even named yet. Chapter 1. The Arcade Beginnings Fact 1. Mario's very first appearance was not in a Mario game at all. It was in a 1981 arcade game called Donkey Kong, where he was simply known as Jumpman. Fact 2. In Donkey Kong, Jumpman's profession was a carpenter, not yet a plumber. That change would come later. Fact 3. Donkey Kong was developed in the early months of 1981 under the direction of a young designer named Shigeru Miyamoto, who had joined Nintendo only a few years earlier. Fact 4. The game was created under unusual pressure. Nintendo had a large stock of unsold arcade cabinets from a previous game called Radar Scope, which had flopped in North America. Rather than scrap the hardware, the company decided to build an entirely new game to run on it. Fact 5. Miyamoto worked on Donkey Kong under the supervision of Gunpei Yokoi, the designer who would later go on to create the Game Boy. Fact 6. The game was reportedly completed in a very tight window of around 2.5 months, a remarkably fast turnaround for something that would go on to change the entire video game industry. Fact 7. Before settling on the ape and carpenter premise, the project had actually started life as a licensed Popeye game. When Nintendo couldn't secure the rights to Popeye, the sailor was swapped for a mustached hero, and Bluto the rival was swapped for a giant barrel-throwing gorilla. Fact 8. Popeye's usual love interest, Olive Oil, became the character we now know as Pauline, Jumpman's girlfriend, kidnapped at the start of the game. Fact 9. In the earliest materials, before the character was named Mario, Pauline herself was simply referred to as the Lady. Fact 10. The name Donkey Kong wasn't meant to imply the ape was literally a donkey. Miyamoto has said he intended donkey as a stand-in for stubbornness, paired with Kong to suggest a giant ape, aiming for something like stubborn ape in feeling, if not in literal translation. Fact 11. According to court records from later Nintendo litigation, Miyamoto testified that he had less direct involvement in some of the naming decisions than fan folklore often suggests, which shows just how many small hands shaped this character early on. Fact 12. Mario's name did not come from anywhere in the game's story. It came from real life. Nintendo of America's warehouse landlord at the time was a man named Mario Segale, and, as the story famously goes, he bore a resemblance to the character on screen and had a memorable interaction with Nintendo staff around the time the localization was happening. Fact 13. Pauline's name has a similarly grounded human origin. It was taken from the name of an employee's wife at Nintendo of America. Fact 14. In Donkey Kong, the plot is simple and now iconic. Donkey Kong is Jumpman's own pet, who escapes captivity, kidnaps Pauline, and climbs to the top of a construction site, forcing Jumpman to climb up after them. Fact 15. The game's 4 stages represent 25, 50, 75, and 100 meters of a structure that Donkey Kong has climbed, a small world-building detail baked directly into the level design. Fact 16. The very first stage has Mario navigating crooked girders while dodging barrels and oil drums, a template for platforming that would influence games for decades. Fact 17. The second stage introduces conveyor belts carrying cement pans, requiring precise timing to avoid getting squashed. Fact 18. The third stage has the player riding elevators while dodging bouncing springs, a rare early example of vertical and mechanical hazard design in an arcade game. Fact 19. The final stage requires removing 8 rivets from the platform holding Donkey Kong up, which causes the structure to collapse and reunites Jumpman with Pauline. Fact 20. Donkey Kong is widely considered one of the earliest true platform games, distinguished by being one of the first arcade titles to feature actual dedicated jumping as a core mechanic. Fact 21. Some game historians note that the honor of first platformer more precisely belongs to a lesser-known game called Space Panic, But Donkey Kong was the first to make jumping itself the central, refined mechanic, which is why it's remembered as the genre's true beginning. Fact 22. Donkey Kong has a notorious glitch known as the kill screen, appearing on the 22nd level, caused by a timer error in the game's original code that abruptly ends the player's game no matter how skilled they are. Fact 23. Reaching that kill screen became something of a legendary achievement among competitive arcade players in the decades that followed, immortalized in documentaries about classic arcade competition. Fact 24. Around 132,000 Donkey Kong arcade cabinets were sold across Japan and North America, making it, at the time, one of the most commercially successful arcade machines of the Golden Age. Fact 25. Donkey Kong was, by a wide margin, the most profitable game Nintendo had made up to that point. A single, scrappy project born from leftover circuit boards that ended up rescuing the company's fortunes in North America. Fact 26. Mario's visual design in these early days, the mustache, the cap, the overalls, was shaped heavily by hardware limitations. A mustache made a mouth easier to render clearly on tiny, blocky sprites. A cap meant animators didn't have to draw hair moving. Overalls made his arms readable as separate from his body when he moved. Fact 27. Some historians have pointed out visual similarities between Mario's early color palette, red shirt, blue overalls, and the cover of a Japanese men's fashion magazine from around the same period, though this remains a point of speculation rather than a confirmed inspiration. Fact 28. Because Nintendo couldn't produce Donkey Kong cabinets fast enough to meet demand, other companies produced unlicensed clones, including one called Crazy Kong, released to fill the gap in the market. Fact 29. In 1982, Nintendo followed up with Donkey Kong Jr., in which players controlled Donkey Kong's son trying to rescue his father from Mario, who was cast in something closer to a villain role for the only major time in the franchise's history. Fact 30. This flipped morality, Mario as the one holding a character captive, is one of the rare moments in the whole franchise where the hero and villain rules aren't cleanly drawn the way we'd expect from later games. Fact 31. In 1983, Mario got his first game built specifically around himself and his brother, Mario Bros., an arcade title developed for Nintendo's own arcade hardware. Fact 32. Mario Bros. Is the very first appearance of Luigi, Mario's brother, introduced as a green-clad second player so that two people could play cooperatively. Fact 33. According to Nintendo's own later retrospectives, the decision to add Luigi was driven by Gunpei Yokoi's desire to make a game that would be simple and welcoming for two players to enjoy at the same time. Fact 34. In Mario Bros., the setting shifts away from a construction site and instead takes place in the sewers beneath New York City, populated by turtles, crabs, and flies. Fact 35. According to Miyamoto, the choice of enemies came first, and the setting came second. The team wanted turtles, crabs, and flies as antagonists, and reasoned that some kind of large underground tunnel system was the only environment where all three would plausibly coexist. Fact 36. Miyamoto has said he imagined enormous underground tunnels similar to what might exist beneath a city like New York, despite never having visited New York himself at the time. Fact 37. The mechanic of hitting enemies from below to flip them over, then kicking them away, made its debut in Mario Bros., and would go on to define how players interact with Koopa Troopas in every Mario platformer that followed. Fact 38. The idea for turtles that could be flipped and later pop out of their shells came about through casual brainstorming between Miyamoto and sound designer Hirokazu Tanaka, reportedly during an evening conversation over drinks. Fact 39. Mario Bros. Also introduced the POW block, a single object that, when hit, can flip every enemy on screen at once, a simple, elegant piece of design still referenced in later Mario titles and spin-offs. Fact 40. Mario Bros. Was successful enough on arcade hardware that Nintendo brought it home to the Famicom in Japan, helping set the stage for Mario as a console character rather than purely an arcade one. Fact 41. This arcade version of Mario Bros. Would later be included, decades afterward, in various compilation re-releases, allowing new generations of players to experience the very earliest Mario Bros. Adventure exactly as it first appeared. Fact 42. At this stage in Mario's history, there was no Bowser, no Princess Peach as we know her, and no Mushroom Kingdom. Those foundational pieces of Mario lore were still 2 years away. That brings us to the end of Mario's earliest arcade years. No kingdom yet, no fire flowers, no warp pipes. Just a carpenter, his brother, some barrels, and a sewer full of turtles. Next, we'll step into 1985, and the game that changed everything. Chapter 2, Super Mario Bros. And the NES era fact 43. Super Mario Bros. Was released in Japan on September 13th, 1985, for the family computer known outside Japan as the Nintendo Entertainment System. Fact 44. The game arrived in North America later that same year, bundled with mini NES consoles, which helped introduce an entire generation of players to Mario at once. Fact 45. Development on what would become Super Mario Bros. Actually began without Mario in it at all. According to accounts from the era, the nearly finished game had a blank rectangle standing in for wherever the main character would eventually go. Fact 46. The decision to use Mario as the protagonist came in part after Takashi Tezuka and Miyamoto reviewed sales figures showing how well the Famicom port of the earlier Mario Bros. Arcade game had performed. Fact 47. The idea of side-scrolling was central to the new design. Super Mario Bros. Is often credited as the game that popularized side-scrolling platform gameplay to a mass audience, moving beyond the single static screens of earlier arcade titles. Fact 48. Miyamoto has said his appreciation for the smooth scrolling and vibrant color of an earlier Nintendo game, Kung Fu, directly influenced his ambitions for the new project's visual feel. Fact 49. Because the Famicom was already approaching the end of its planned lifespan in Japan by 1985, Miyamoto has described this project, at least in part, as an attempt to create one last great, defining game for the console before it was succeeded. Fact 50. The now famous warp pipes were inspired, according to Miyamoto, by something as mundane as a plastic pipe he happened to notice sticking out of a wall while walking through the streets of Kyoto. Fact 51. Before the pipes were conceived, the development team faced a practical problem. Enemies that walked off the bottom of the screen needed a way to reappear at the top, and the pipe idea offered a visual solution to something that had started as a purely technical puzzle. Fact 52. The very first level of the game, World 1-1, was intentionally designed by Miyamoto to function as a tutorial, gently teaching new players how to run, jump, and interact with blocks, all without a single word of instruction on screen. Fact 53. According to Miyamoto, even the placement of a single Goomba early in World 1-1 was carefully considered, so that a new player's first encounter with an enemy would teach them the stomping mechanic almost by accident. Fact 54. The Super Mushroom, which causes Mario to grow larger, exists because early builds of the game made Mario's default size feel too large relative to the level geometry. Rather than resize everything, the team added a power-up system where Mario could shrink and grow. Fact 55. Miyamoto has explained that this growing mechanic was, in some sense, an accident of production constraints that turned into one of the most iconic gameplay ideas in the entire series. Fact 56. The Fire Flower, which allows Mario to throw fireballs, debuted in this same game, giving players their first ranged attack option in the series' history. Fact 57. The Invincibility Starman also made its first appearance here, along with its instantly recognizable, urgent musical cue that speeds up the entire soundtrack while it's active. Fact 58. Bowser, referred to in the original English materials as King Koopa, made his very first appearance as the primary antagonist of Super Mario Bros., replacing Donkey Kong as the series' signature villain. Fact 59. Princess Toadstool, the character who would later become known primarily as Princess Peach, was introduced in this game as the kidnapped royal Mario sets out to rescue. Fact 60. The Mushroom Kingdom itself, as a named setting, was established here for the first time, replacing the more grounded city-based settings of the earlier arcade games. Fact 61. Super Mario Bros. Is structured across 8 distinct worlds, each ending in a boss encounter, a template that would shape level and world design across dozens of future Mario titles. Fact 62. In several of the game's castle levels, the boss Mario defeats is later revealed to be a toad in disguise, informing Mario that the princess is in another castle, a line that would go on to become one of the most quoted phrases in video game history. Fact 63. According to Miyamoto, even small narrative logic questions bothered him during development, such as why Mario would appear to be standing underground immediately after finishing an overworld level, with no visible transition connecting the two spaces. Fact 64. Rather than animate a falling transition, which the hardware of the time made difficult, Miyamoto simply had Mario drop straight down from the top of the new screen and decided the simplicity worked well enough to keep. Fact 65. Super Mario Bros. Sold in extraordinary numbers, eventually surpassing 40 million units on the NES alone, a figure that helped make it, for a long stretch of gaming history, the best-selling video game ever made. Fact 66. Contrary to a common misconception, Super Mario Bros. Is not actually Luigi's first appearance. That honor belongs to the earlier 1983 arcade game, Mario Bros. Fact 67. A visual quirk from this era, often pointed out by longtime fans, is that the bushes and the clouds in Super Mario Bros. Use the exact same sprite shape, simply recolored, a clever way of stretching limited graphical resources. Fact 68. The character composer behind the game's now immortal soundtrack was Koji Kondo, whose main theme for World 1-1 remains one of the most widely recognized pieces of music in video game history. Fact 69. Super Mario Bros. Also had a far more difficult sequel released only in Japan, sometimes called The Lost Levels internationally, which was considered too punishing for a Western release at the time. Fact 70. That Japanese sequel introduced the Poison Mushroom, a power-up look-alike that actually damages Mario instead of helping him, a mischievous subversion of a mechanic players had just learned to trust. Fact 71. The version of Super Mario Bros. 2 that was actually released in North America in 1988 has an unusual origin. It began life as an entirely different game, a Japanese title called Doki Doki Panic, which was reworked with Mario characters layered on top. Fact 72. Doki Doki Panic itself had been developed for a Japanese charity or promotional event tied to Fuji Television, which explains some of its more unusual character designs compared to other Mario titles of the time. Fact 73. Because of this swap, Super Mario Bros. 2, as most of the world played it, feels distinctly different from other entries, most notably in its ability to pick up and throw enemies and vegetables instead of stomping on them. Fact 74. This American version of Super Mario Bros. 2 also introduced several characters who would go on to become permanent series regulars, including Shy Guys and Birdo. Fact 75. In 1988, Super Mario Bros. 3 arrived in Japan, and is frequently cited by longtime fans and critics as one of the finest achievements of the entire NES library. Fact 76. Super Mario Bros. 3 introduced the overworld map screen, letting players see their path across a kingdom between levels, rather than simply progressing linearly, level to level. Fact 77. This game also introduced a wide range of new power-up suits, many based on animals, including the raccoon suit, which allows Mario to fly for short bursts and attack with his tail. Fact 78. The Tanuki suit, a variation on the raccoon suit, gave Mario the ability to transform into a stone statue for a short time, making him briefly invincible to touch-based enemy damage. Fact 79. Super Mario Bros. 3's American release was memorably showcased inside the 1989 film The Wizard, a movie largely remembered today as an extended advertisement for the game, which appeared on screen before its official American release. Fact 80. The version of Super Mario Bros. 3 that reached North America in 1990 included graphical polish and a handful of design refinements compared to the original 1988 Japanese release. Fact 81. Bowser's children, the 7 Koopalings, made their debut in Super Mario Bros. 3, each ruling over their own individual world, and each with a unique boss battle design. Fact 82. Interestingly, in the story presented at the time, Bowser was never described as the Koopalings' biological father. The detail was left ambiguous for years before later material clarified the family relationship more directly. Fact 83. Super Mario Bros. 3 would go on to sell extremely well worldwide, further cementing Mario as Nintendo's flagship character heading into the next console generation. That's where things stood as the 1980s came to a close. A plumber, his brother, an ever-expanding kingdom, and a growing cast of characters that would only keep multiplying. Let's move now into the early 1990s, and a new, more powerful piece of hardware that would let this world grow even bigger. Chapter 3. The Super Nintendo Era Fact 84. Super Mario World launched in 1990 alongside the Super Famicom in Japan. serving as a launch title meant to show off what the new, more powerful hardware could do. Fact 85. This game introduced Yoshi, the green dinosaur companion who would go on to become one of the most beloved characters in the entire franchise. Fact 86. According to series veteran Takashi Tezuka, Yoshi was originally conceived as a type of Koopa, with the saddle on his back originally intended to represent his own shell. Fact 87. Miyamoto had wanted to give Mario a dinosaur companion as far back as the original Super Mario Bros. On the NES, but hardware limitations at the time made the idea impossible to realize. Fact 88. It wasn't until the significantly more capable Super Nintendo hardware arrived that this long-held idea could finally be built, resulting in Yoshi's debut in Super Mario World. Fact 89. In early builds of Super Mario World, Mario's interaction with Yoshi was originally depicted as a punch, rather than the gentler action of simply riding him, before the friendlier animation was settled on. Fact 90. Super Mario World introduced the Cape Feather, a power-up allowing Mario to glide through the air and attack enemies with a spinning cape maneuver. Fact 91. This game also expanded the overworld map concept from Super Mario Bros. 3 into a more elaborate branching structure, including secret exits that unlock alternate paths through the kingdom. Fact 92. Super Mario World eventually sold over 20 million copies, making it one of the best-selling games on the Super Nintendo platform. Fact 93. In 1992, Super Mario Kart launched on the Super Nintendo, marking Mario's first venture into a full-fledged racing game. Fact 94. According to development retrospectives, Mario himself was not part of the earliest prototype for this racing game at all. The team's original goal was simply to solve a technical challenge, displaying two separate racing viewpoints on screen at the same time for split-screen multiplayer. Fact 95. Only after that split-screen prototype worked did the idea of adding actual racing, and then Mario characters, enter the picture, according to accounts from Miyamoto himself. Fact 96. Miyamoto has described watching one test kart stop while another flew past it on screen, and realizing in that moment how visually satisfying the interaction looked, which helped shape the final racing concept. Fact 97. Super Mario Kart made use of the SNES's Mode 7 graphical technique, which allowed the background to be scaled and rotated in real time, giving the illusion of a fully three-dimensional racetrack on hardware that was, underneath, still fundamentally two-dimensional. Fact 98. The battle mode included in Super Mario Kart, complete with balloon-popping combat between karts, was reportedly part of the design conversation from relatively early in development. Fact 99. Also in 1992, Yoshi and Yoshi's Cookie were released as puzzle-oriented spin-off titles, an early sign of how popular the newly introduced dinosaur character had already become with players. Fact 100. In 1992, Mario Paint was released for the Super Nintendo, a creative software title that came bundled with the Super NES mouse, letting players draw, animate, and compose simple music. Fact 101. Mario Paint's built-in music composer became particularly beloved among players, letting people create short tunes using a simple grid-based interface, long before user-generated content was common in games. Fact 102. In 1993, Mario appeared in a fully live-action feature film, Super Mario Bros., which took considerable creative liberties with the source material, reimagining the Mushroom Kingdom as a dark, dystopian alternate dimension. Fact 103. In that same 1993 film, Yoshi appears in the form of a realistic animatronic dinosaur, a notably different visual interpretation from the friendly, cartoonish Yoshi seen in the games. Fact 104. Also in 1993, Wario made his first appearance, introduced in the Game Boy title Super Mario Land 2: 6 Golden Coins, cast as a rival to Mario and the eventual usurper of Mario's own castle in that game's story. Fact 105. Wario's name is a portmanteau, combining Mario with the Japanese word warui, meaning bad. His name essentially translates to something like Bad Mario. Fact 106. Wario would go on to headline his own spin-off series the following year, with Wario Land, Super Mario Land 3 arriving for the Game Boy in 1994, shifting the focus entirely onto this greedy anti-hero. Fact 107. In 1995, Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island was released, a prequel of sorts, set before Mario and Luigi were born, focusing on Yoshi carrying baby Mario across a series of dangers to reunite him with a kidnapped baby Luigi. Fact 108. According to Yoshi's Island's designer Shigefumi Hino, the game was conceived partly because the development team felt they had already explored most creative possibilities available within traditional two-dimensional Mario platforming. Fact 109. This left an opening to imagine a completely different kind of Mario platformer built around Yoshi instead, one aimed at feeling more accessible and different in tone from the mainline series. Fact 110. Yoshi's Island introduced Yoshi's now signature flutter jump, giving players a brief hovering ability at the top of a jump, along with the ability to swallow enemies and turn them into throwable eggs. Fact 111. The distinct, hand-drawn, crayon and watercolor art style of Yoshi's Island was a deliberate departure from the more traditional pixel art of earlier Mario titles, and remains one of the most visually distinctive looks in the franchise's history. Fact 112. Also released in 1995, Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars was developed in collaboration with Square, the studio behind the Final Fantasy series, marking the first time Mario appeared in a full turn-based role-playing game. Fact 113. Super Mario RPG introduced entirely new characters to the Mario universe made specifically for this collaboration, including Geno and Mallow, neither of whom originated from the Mushroom Kingdom itself. Fact 114. This RPG also gave Bowser a rare moment of vulnerability and even reluctant cooperation with Mario, as the two are forced into an uneasy alliance against a new, shared threat that appears in the story. Fact 115. Super Mario RPG's blend of traditional turn-based combat with real-time, timed button presses for extra damage was considered innovative for its era, and would go on to directly influence the battle systems of later Mario RPG spin-offs. By the end of the Super Nintendo era, Mario's world had grown far beyond simple side-scrolling. Dinosaurs, carts, paintbrushes, and even full role-playing adventures had all found their way into his story. But the biggest shift was still ahead. Let's move now into 1996, and the leap into 3 dimensions. Chapter 4, The Leap into 3 Dimensions, Fact 116. Super Mario 64 released in Japan in June of 1996, becoming the very first Super Mario title to feature fully 3-dimensional gameplay, rather than a flat, side-scrolling perspective. Fact 117. The game served as a launch title for the Nintendo 64, and was widely regarded, even at the time, as a defining showcase for what the new console's hardware could achieve. Fact 118. Super Mario 64 replaced the earlier series' end-of-level flagpoles with a more open structure, sending players into large, semi-open worlds accessed through magical paintings inside Princess Peach's castle. Fact 119. Power Stars became the primary collectible objective of the game, with players needing to gather them from these painting worlds in order to unlock new areas of the castle itself. Fact 120. Yoshi makes only a brief, secret appearance in Super Mario 64, found on the roof of the castle, but only after the player has collected all 120 Power Stars in the game. Fact 121. Finding Yoshi at the end of Super Mario 64 rewards the player with an extended pool of extra lives and an upgraded jumping ability, a quiet bonus for the most dedicated players. Fact 122. Super Mario 64's camera system, which allowed players to adjust their viewpoint using the console's C buttons alongside the analog stick, was considered a genuinely difficult problem to solve at the time, since almost no prior game had attempted true 3D camera control at this scale. Fact 123. According to Miyamoto, the balance between giving players camera freedom and keeping them oriented in 3D space would remain a persistent design challenge across every subsequent 3D Mario title. Fact 124. In 2002, Nintendo released Super Mario Sunshine for the GameCube, notable for introducing FLUDD, a sentient water-spraying backpack device that assists Mario with both combat and movement throughout the game. Fact 125. Super Mario Sunshine takes place on the tropical Isle Delfino, a significant tonal and visual departure from the Mushroom Kingdom setting used in most other mainline games. Fact 126. This game introduced Bowser Jr., Bowser's son, who frames Mario for a series of graffiti-related crimes across the island, setting the entire plot of the game into motion. Fact 127. Bowser Jr. is also the first game in which Bowser is explicitly canonically confirmed to have a son, adding a small but significant new piece to the ongoing Koopa family lore. Fact 128. Super Mario Sunshine's camera relied on the GameCube controller's C-stick for free camera control, a design choice that received some criticism at the time for feeling less intuitive than players had hoped. Fact 129. Despite some mixed critical reception regarding its camera and difficulty, Super Mario Sunshine has developed a notable cult following in the years since its release, with many fans citing its atmosphere and music as particular strengths. Fact 130. During this era, Luigi also received his own standalone spotlight for the first time, with Luigi's Mansion releasing as a launch title for the GameCube in 2001. Fact 131. Luigi's Mansion cast Luigi rather than Mario as the sole protagonist, tasking him with exploring a haunted mansion and capturing ghosts using a modified vacuum cleaner called the Poltergust 3000. Fact 132. The premise of Luigi's Mansion was built around Luigi discovering he had unexpectedly won a mansion in a contest he did not remember entering, only to find Mario has gone missing somewhere inside it. Fact 133. Luigi's Mansion helped further establish Luigi's now familiar characterization as more timid and easily frightened compared to his more fearless older brother. Fact 134. During the N64 era, Mario Party made its debut in 1998, developed by Hudson Soft, introducing a board game-style structure combined with dozens of short, competitive minigames. Fact 135. Mario Party was specifically designed with a younger, broader audience in mind, and Miyamoto himself served in a development supervisory role on the project. Fact 136. The Mario Party series would go on to hold the distinction, according to later industry tallies, of being the longest-running minigame-based series in video game history. Fact 137. Also in 1996, Mario Kart 64 released, expanding the racing formula to support 4 simultaneous local players for the very first time, taking advantage of the Nintendo 64's 4 built-in controller ports. Fact 138. This 4-player functionality helped make Mario Kart 64 an enormously popular multiplayer party experience among friends and families throughout the late 1990s. Fact 139. In the North American and European localizations of Mario Kart 64, Charles Martinet's voice work was used for both Mario and, for the very first time, Luigi as well. Fact 140. According to later interviews, Martinet developed Luigi's distinct vocal cadence partly by trying to minimize how much he moved his mouth while speaking, giving Luigi a subtly different verbal rhythm compared to Mario. Fact 141. Also during this period, Paper Mario released for the Nintendo 64 in 2000, introducing a distinctive flat, paper-craft visual style that stood in deliberate contrast to the fully three-dimensional look of Super Mario 64. Fact 142. Paper Mario was developed by Intelligent Systems, a studio that would go on to helm the entire Paper Mario sub-series for years afterward. Fact 143. This game featured a village of Yoshi characters that Mario could visit, further deepening Yoshi's presence as a recurring element across many different corners of the wider Mario universe. Fact 144. Mario Golf and Mario Tennis, both developed by Camelot Software Planning, also emerged during the Nintendo 64 era, establishing sports spin-offs as another consistent branch of the growing Mario franchise. Fact 145. In 1999, Super Smash Bros. Launched on the Nintendo 64, featuring Mario alongside a roster of other major Nintendo characters in a crossover fighting game, unlike anything the company had made before. Fact 146. Yoshi was among the 12 total characters, and 8 default characters, available in that original Super Smash Bros. Roster. Fact 147. Super Mario Advance, a Game Boy Advance remake of Super Mario Bros. 2, released in 2001, and included Charles Martinet providing voices for several boss characters, including Wart, Mouser, Triclide, and Clawgrip. That was the era where Mario truly stepped off the flat page and into a fully realized three-dimensional world, castles you could walk around, water you could spray, and a haunted mansion run entirely by his brother. Next, we'll follow Mario into the mid-2000s, and the games that carried him from the GameCube into the Wii. Chapter 5. The Ds and Wii Era Fact 148. In 2004, Mario returned to a traditional two-dimensional side-scrolling style for the first time in over a decade, with New Super Mario Bros., released for the Nintendo Ds. Fact 149. New Super Mario Bros. Blended classic, flat platforming with modern three-dimensional character models, giving it a visual identity distinct from both the original NES games and the fully 3D console titles. Fact 150. This game introduced the Mega Mushroom, a power-up that temporarily transforms Mario into an enormous giant, capable of destroying nearly everything in his path, including entire blocks of level scenery. Fact 151. New Super Mario Bros. Also introduced the Mini Mushroom, which shrinks Mario down to a tiny size, allowing him to access small gaps and even walk briefly across the surface of water. Fact 152. Also in 2004, Super Mario 64 DS released as a launch title for the Nintendo DS, an expanded remake of the original Nintendo 64 classic. Fact 153. Unlike the original, Super Mario 64 DS made Yoshi a fully playable character from the very beginning of the game, rather than a secret unlocked only after collecting all 120 stars. Fact 154. This DIS remake also added Luigi and Wario as separate playable characters, each with their own unique abilities gained from a special item called the Power Flower. Fact 155. With the Power Flower, Mario is able to temporarily inflate like a balloon and float gently through the air, offering a new twist on a familiar space. Fact 156. Luigi's version of this power, by contrast, allows him to become intangible and pass through certain obstacles, echoing the vanish capability from the original Nintendo 64 release. Fact 157. Wario's version of the same power instead coats him in metal, granting him temporary invincibility along with the ability to safely sink and move underwater. Fact 158. Yoshi, uniquely in this remake, gains the ability to breathe fire, letting him burn enemies and melt ice obstacles that other characters cannot interact with in the same way. Fact 159. In 2007, Super Mario Galaxy released for the Wii, sending Mario into outer space for the first time and introducing gravity-bending platforming built around small, spherical planetoids. Fact 160. According to director Yoshiaki Koizumi, the core motivation behind Super Mario Galaxy's design was to build a 3D Mario game around spherical worlds specifically, and the hope that a curved planet-shaped level would feel more intuitive to navigate than the more traditional, sprawling 3D spaces used in earlier games. Fact 161. Koizumi has said that some of his concerns going into this project stemmed directly from issues he had personally observed during the development of earlier 3D titles, including motion sickness caused by aggressive or disorienting camera movement. Fact 162. The decision to set the game in outer space specifically arose because the development team felt that spherical worlds would most naturally and intuitively read to players as small planets, rather than needing extra explanation. Fact 163. Super Mario Galaxy marked the first Mario game to be developed with a more linear, curated level structure in its 3D outings, guiding players from a clear starting point toward each power star, in contrast to the more open, exploratory design of Super Mario 64 and Super Mario Sunshine. Fact 164. Rosalina, a new character who serves as a maternal cosmic guide for a group of small star-shaped creatures called Lumas, was introduced for the first time in Super Mario Galaxy. Fact 165. Super Mario Galaxy's development team, Nintendo id Tokyo, had previously worked on Donkey Kong Jungle Beat, and drew directly on that project's playtesting methods when refining the new game's camera and control systems. Fact 166. Reportedly, due to a scheduling mix-up involving pre-order information at a retail chain, an automated phone message briefly and mistakenly informed some customers that Super Mario Galaxy would carry a mature content rating, which of course turned out not to be the case. Fact 167. Super Mario Galaxy received a very high critical score from the influential Japanese gaming publication Famitsu, matching the historic score originally given to Super Mario 64 more than a decade earlier. Fact 168. In 2009, new Super Mario Bros. Wii released, bringing 4-player simultaneous cooperative platforming to the mainline 2D series for the very first time. Fact 169. This entry also marked the first time Yoshi appeared as a playable character within a traditional New Super Mario Bros. Style side-scrolling adventure on a home console. Fact 170. During this period, Charles Martinet's voice work had become deeply woven into the sound design of the series beyond just dialogue. In Super Mario 64, a recording of his own laughter, pitched down and slowed, had been repurposed as Bowser's laugh, while a sped-up version of the same recording became the sound of the ghostly boos. Fact 171. Those same reused vocal samples from Martinet would go on to appear, further modified, as the sound design for other enemies across later games, including Dry Bones in Super Mario Galaxy. Fact 172. In Mario Kart 64, a pitched-down recording of Wario's own laugh, also performed by Martinet, was repurposed as the sound effect for thwomps, the heavy stone block enemies that slam down from above. Fact 173. In 2007, Super Paper Mario released for the Wii, blending the flat, side-scrolling perspective of traditional 2D Mario games with the ability to flip into a three-dimensional viewpoint at will, revealing hidden paths and secrets. Fact 174. Also released in 2007, Mario Strikers Charged continued the arcade-style soccer spin-off series, allowing characters to use special items and super-powered moves mid-match, blending Mario's item-based chaos with competitive sports. Fact 175. Mario & Luigi: Bowser's Inside Story, released in 2009, uniquely placed much of its story inside Bowser's own body, following Mario and Luigi after they are accidentally inhaled and must navigate his internal anatomy to help him. That takes us through one of the most prolific stretches in Mario's entire history: new hardware, new dimensions of gameplay, and Bowser somehow ending up with two brothers living inside him. Let's continue now into the years that followed, as the series pushed further into orbit and beyond. Chapter 6. The 3DS and Wii U Era. Fact 176. Super Mario Galaxy 2 released in 2010, continuing directly from the design foundation of the original Galaxy, while introducing new mechanics, including Yoshi as a fully playable, rideable companion throughout many of its galaxies. Fact 177. In Super Mario Galaxy 2, Yoshi gained special abilities tied to specific fruits he could eat, temporarily granting him powers like inflating to float or emitting bursts of light in dark areas. Fact 178. In 2011, Super Mario 3D Land released for the Nintendo 3DS, marking the first mainline 3D Mario platformer designed specifically for a handheld system, rather than a home console. Fact 179. Super Mario 3D Land reintroduced the Tanuki suit from Super Mario Bros. 3, adapting its stone transformation and gliding properties for a fully three-dimensional environment for the first time. Fact 180. In 2012, Mario Kart 7 released for the Nintendo 3DS, introducing gliders and underwater driving sections to the racing series for the very first time. Fact 181. These new gliding and underwater mechanics from Mario Kart 7 would go on to become recurring staples of the series, appearing again in subsequent Mario Kart entries. Fact 182. In 2013, Super Mario 3D World released for the Wii U, bringing the more contained, level-based structure of Super Mario 3D Land to a home console, while also supporting 4-player simultaneous cooperative play. Fact 183. Super Mario 3D World introduced the Cat Suit, a power-up granting Mario and other characters the ability to climb walls, pounce on enemies from above, and scratch through certain obstacles. Fact 184. According to Miyamoto's own comparisons, Super Mario 3D World was intentionally designed to feel more accessible to casual players than some of the more open, core gamer-oriented 3D Mario titles that preceded it, echoing the more welcoming design philosophy of the original New Super Mario Bros. Series. Fact 185. In 2014, Mario Kart 8 released for the Wii U, introducing anti-gravity driving sections that allow karts to drive along walls, and even upside down on certain portions of a track. Fact 186. According to development interviews, the anti-gravity mechanic in Mario Kart 8 actually began as a completely different concept, an equipable drill that would let players tunnel underneath the racetrack itself, before evolving into the wall and ceiling driving mechanic ultimately used in the finished game. Fact 187. Mario Kart 8 later received a definitive re-release for the Nintendo Switch, titled Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which would go on to become one of the best-selling video games ever released on any platform. Fact 188. In 2014, Captain Toad Treasure Tracker released as a spin-off puzzle platformer, casting the small mushroom-headed Toad character as a fully playable protagonist for the first time in a dedicated Mario title of his own. Fact 189. Music originally composed for Super Mario Galaxy would go on to be reused and rearranged across a surprising number of later titles, including Mario Kart 8, Captain Toad, Treasure Tracker, and Super Smash Bros. For the Wii U. Fact 190. In 2015, Super Mario Maker released for the Wii U, allowing players to design, build, and share their own custom Mario levels using assets drawn from multiple different eras of the series' visual history. Fact 191. Super Mario Maker let players toggle between visual styles based on Super Mario Bros., Super Mario Bros. 3, Super Mario World, and New Super Mario Bros. U, each with its own distinct set of physics quirks tied to the era it represented. Fact 192. A sequel, Super Mario Maker 2, released in 2019 for the Nintendo Switch, adding new tools, additional visual styles, and a story-driven single-player campaign alongside its level creation features. Fact 193. Throughout the 2010s, different games and various Mario compilations occasionally used entirely different voice actors for the same characters. In Super Mario 64, Bowser was voiced by Charles Martinet, while in Super Mario Sunshine, the role passed briefly to Scott Burns, before Kenny James took over the role for Super Mario Galaxy onward. Fact 194. Princess Peach's voice also changed hands across this same stretch of games, voiced by Leslie Swan in Super Mario 64, by Jen Taylor in Super Mario Sunshine, and by Samantha Kelly beginning with Super Mario Galaxy. Fact 195. By this point in franchise history, Charles Martinet had voiced Mario, Luigi, Wario, and Waluigi across an enormous span of titles, including numerous entries in the Mario Party, Mario Kart, Mario Tennis, and Mario Golf series. Fact 196. Martinet has said that at the time of his original 1990 audition, he had never heard of either Mario or Nintendo, and was reportedly not even on the initial list of actors invited to audition for the role. Fact 197. According to Martinet's own retelling, he essentially crashed the audition process and was asked somewhat informally to perform an Italian accent on the spot. Fact 198. In 2013, Mario and his friends appeared as licensed guest characters within a Mario-themed variant of Sega's own kart racing series, Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed, illustrating an unusually cooperative crossover between two historically rival gaming mascots. Fact 199. Throughout this era, the Mario Party series transitioned developers, moving from its longtime studio Hudson Soft to a newer studio called Endcube, beginning with Mario Party 9 in 2012. Fact 200. By this point in the franchise's history, cumulative sales figures for the Mario Party series alone had climbed into the tens of millions of units worldwide, making it one of Nintendo's most commercially significant spin-off franchises. We're now 200 facts into Mario's story, moving steadily through decades of pixels, polygons, and everything in between. If you're starting to feel drowsy, that's exactly as it should be. Just let your eyes rest and let the facts keep gently unfolding. Next, we head into the Nintendo Switch years, and Mario's biggest leap yet. Chapter 7. The Switch Era. Odyssey, Film, and Wonder Fact 201. Super Mario Odyssey released for the Nintendo Switch on October 27, 2017, introducing Cappy, a sentient hat that allows Mario to capture and briefly control a wide range of enemies and objects throughout the game. Fact 202. According to producer Yoshiaki Koizumi, an early idea in development had Pauline, the mayor of the game's New Donk City setting, originally envisioned instead as a literal princess of that city, before the concept was reworked. Fact 203. Koizumi has explained that the idea was ultimately changed because the fictional setting of New Donk City wasn't built around a monarchy at all, which made Princess a poor fit, leading the team to recast Pauline as the city's mayor instead. Fact 204. Super Mario Odyssey was showcased at E3 in 2017, and according to various industry observers at the time, it became one of the most talked about games on social media that year, even before its release. Fact 205. The game went on to receive a nearly perfect score from the Japanese gaming publication Famitsu, matching the same historic high score once given to both Super Mario 64 and Super Mario Galaxy. Fact 206. Within just 3 days of release, Super Mario Odyssey had already sold more than 2 million copies worldwide, with over 500,000 of those sales coming from Japan alone. Fact 207. By March of 2018, less than half a year after release, Super Mario Odyssey had surpassed 10 million units sold, making it the best-selling game on the Nintendo Switch up to that point in the console's life. Fact 208. Super Mario Odyssey's collectible system replaced the series' traditional Power Stars with Power Moons, of which the game contains an unusually large number, going up into the hundreds across its many kingdoms. Fact 209. According to Miyamoto's own remarks about the design philosophy behind Odyssey, the goal was to build a fully sandbox-style 3D Mario experience, deliberately harkening back to the exploratory, open feel of Super Mario 64 and Super Mario Sunshine rather than the more linear, corridor-style design used in the Galaxy titles. Fact 210. Yoshi appears as a capturable character within Super Mario Odyssey, found near Peach's castle in the Mushroom Kingdom area, echoing his secret cameo appearance in the original Super Mario 64. Fact 211. In 2023, Nintendo released the Super Mario Bros. Movie, a fully animated feature produced in partnership with Illumination, marking Mario's first major theatrical release since the live-action 1993 film. Fact 212. In this 2023 film, Mario is voiced by Chris Pratt, while Charles Martinet, the character's longtime video game voice actor, appears instead in a brief supporting role as Mario and Luigi's father, along with an additional cameo role as a character named Giuseppe. Fact 213. Anya Taylor-Joy voices Princess Peach in the film, Charlie Day voices Luigi, and Jack Black voices Bowser, providing both dialogue and the majority of the character's grunts and roars throughout the movie. Fact 214. Kenny James, who had voiced Bowser in the mainline games for years, contributed some archival uncredited grunts and roars to the film alongside Jack Black's performance. Fact 215. Seth Rogen voices Donkey Kong in the film, with Fred Armisen voicing his father figure, Cranky Kong, rounding out a notably starry voice cast for an interconnected Nintendo universe on screen. Fact 216. Following the film's release and Nintendo's own public statement in August of 2023, Charles Martinet transitioned away from his long-running voice role and was instead given a new title, Mario Ambassador, recognizing his decades of contribution to the character. Fact 217. Kevin Afghani has since taken over voicing Mario, Luigi, Wario, and Waluigi in new game releases going forward, continuing the character's on-screen voice legacy after Martinet's transition. Fact 218. In October of 2023, Super Mario Bros. Wonder released for the Nintendo Switch, marking the first entirely new traditional side-scrolling Mario game in roughly a decade. Fact 219. Super Mario Bros. Wonder introduced an entirely new setting for the mainline series, the Flower Kingdom, described as a region located just beyond the borders of the familiar Mushroom Kingdom. Fact 220. This game's signature new mechanic, the Wonder Flower, temporarily transforms level geometry and rules in strange, often surreal ways whenever it's touched. From warping pipes into unpredictable shapes to shifting entire stages into different genres of gameplay. Fact 221. Wonder also introduced the Elephant Fruit, a power-up that transforms characters into a plump, anthropomorphic elephant form, capable of attacking with a swinging trunk, storing water to spray on obstacles, and smashing through blocks with newfound strength. Fact 222. According to director Shiro Mori, in earlier stages of Wonder's development, the elephant transformation had actually been designed exclusively for Mario himself, before the team expanded it so that every playable character could take on the form. Fact 223. Development footage referenced by fans after release reportedly showed a scrapped ability where Elephant Mario's trunk could be used to inflate a flattened Koopa shell, an idea the developers ultimately abandoned after struggling to find compelling gameplay uses for it. Fact 224. Super Mario Bros. Wonder marked the first appearance of Yoshi as a playable character in a mainline Mario title since Super Mario 64 DS, offering players red, yellow, and blue variant colors in addition to the classic green. Fact 225. In an unusual and much discussed addition, Wonder allows a player controlling one Yoshi to hop on top of and ride another Yoshi, a small interaction that quickly became a point of amused fascination among fans online. Fact 226. According to composer and producer Takashi Tezuka, the team wanted new players who had recently discovered Mario through the 2023 film to see familiar, expressive character movement in Wonder and immediately recognize it as authentically Mario. Fact 227. Princess Daisy is playable for the first time in a mainline side-scrolling Mario platformer in Super Mario Bros. Wonder, following her long history of appearances primarily in spin-off titles like Mario Kart and Mario Party. Fact 228. Super Mario Bros. Wonder introduced online connectivity features, allowing players to see translucent ghost versions of other real players, completing the same course simultaneously, and even offering the ability to revive a struggling player by bumping into their ghost. That brings us through the era that reintroduced Mario to an entirely new generation of moviegoers, alongside longtime fans revisiting his classic side-scrolling roots. Before we drift into the wider world of characters and spin-offs, let's stay chronological for just a little longer and settle into the most recent chapter of Mario's story, the games released in just the last couple of years. Chapter 8, the most recent chapter. Fact 229. In February of 2024, Nintendo released Mario vs. Donkey Kong for the Switch, a full remake of a much earlier Game Boy Advance puzzle platformer, once again pitting Mario against his very first video game rival. Fact 230. Just a month later, in March of 2024, Princess Peach, Showtime, released, casting Princess Peach herself as the sole playable protagonist across a series of theatrical, costume-based transformations, including a sword fighter, a detective, and a mighty warrior. Fact 231. According to Nintendo's own financial disclosures, both Mario vs. Donkey Kong and Princess Peach, Showtime, surpassed 1 million units sold within just a few months of their respective launches. Fact 232. Princess Peach, Showtime, sold particularly quickly out of the gate, reportedly reaching over 1 million units in only about 10 days on the market, according to sales data shared shortly after release. Fact 233. Later in 2024, Mario and Luigi Brothership released, continuing the long-running Mario and Luigi role-playing sub-series, with a story that introduces new characters such as Connie and the Great Conductor. Fact 234. In 2025, Nintendo released the Switch 2, its successor console to the original Nintendo Switch, which by that point had sold well over 140 million units worldwide since its 2017 launch. Fact 235. Mario Kart World arrived as a major launch title for the Switch 2, continuing the racing series' evolution with an even larger, more interconnected world design compared to earlier entries. Fact 236. The release of Mario Kart World also marked a notable, if quiet, shift behind the scenes. It was the first time in roughly 2 decades that Donkey Kong's voice actor changed, following the long tenure of Takashi Nagasako, who had voiced the character since Mario Power Tennis back in 2004. Fact 237. Observant fans noted that one of the credited voice actors on Mario Kart World, Koji Takeda, had also voiced Donkey Kong in the Japanese language dub of the 2023 animated film, suggesting a connection between the movie's casting and this newer generation of game voice work. Fact 238. Around this same period, longtime Princess Peach, Toad, and Toadette voice actress Samantha Kelly, who had voiced these roles since 2007, also stepped away from the games. Continuing a broader wave of voice cast changes across the franchise in the mid-2020s. Fact 239. By this point in the franchise's history, Super Mario Bros. Wonder alone had sold in excess of 13 million copies worldwide, placing it comfortably among the best-selling entries of the modern Mario era. Fact 240. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, spanning both the original Switch and its successor, had by this time sold north of 60 million copies, an extraordinary figure that places it among the best-selling video games ever released on any platform in any genre. With that, we've walked all the way from a construction site in 1981 to a launch console released just last year, more than 4 decades of barrels, mushrooms, stars, moons, and a rotating cast of voices bringing it all to life. For the remainder of our time together tonight, we'll step outside of strict chronological order and spend the rest of this journey drifting gently through the wider Mario universe, its characters, its music, its spin-offs, and all the small, curious details that tie 4 decades of this world together.